Somewhere north of the Arctic Circle right now, a truck driver is hauling 40 tons of drilling equipment up a gravel road carved through the Brooks Range, and the thermometer on his dash reads 62 degrees below zero. When the wind comes screaming off those mountains, the air outside that cab can behave like it is 113 below. At that temperature, exposed skin starts to freeze in about 2 minutes, and if his engine dies out there, the warm cab he is sitting in slowly becomes a freezer with seats. From the outside, the job looks almost peaceful. A lone truck, northern lights overhead, snow stretching to the horizon. At least, that's how it looks in the photographs. The drivers who actually run this road will tell you a very different story, and it starts long before the sun comes up. Fairbanks, Alaska, 4:30 in the morning, middle of January. The parking lot outside the freight terminal is full of Kenworths and Peterbilts, and every single one of them is running. Nobody shut their truck off last night. Nobody shut their truck off last week. When the temperature sits at 40 below for days at a time, a diesel engine that goes cold might simply never start again, so the trucks idle around the clock, burning fuel just to stay alive. The exhaust from all those engines hangs in the air and freezes into a thick white haze the locals call ice fog. Some mornings in Fairbanks, the ice fog gets so dense that drivers walk the parking lot with flashlights looking for their own trucks. The driver climbing into one of those cabs is about to run the Dalton Highway. 414 miles of gravel, ice, and steep mountain grades, stretching from just north of Fairbanks all the way to Deadhorse, a work camp sitting on the edge of the Arctic Ocean at Prudhoe Bay. The road was built in 1974, hammered through some of the harshest wilderness on Earth in just 5 months. And it exists for one reason. It runs alongside the Trans-Alaska Pipeline, and it feeds the oil fields at the top of the world. Every drill bit, every generator, every crate of food and drum of chemicals that keeps Prudhoe Bay running comes up this road on the back of a truck. There is no railroad. There is no other highway. If the trucks stop, the oil fields starve, which means somebody has to drive it. In January, in the dark. In cold that most human beings will never experience in their lives. Before that driver ever touches the highway, the cold has already started working against him. Pay attention to this next detail, because it explains everything about winter trucking in the Arctic. Overnight, the tires on a parked trailer freeze with flat spots where the rubber meets the ground. Drivers call them square tires. For the first few miles, the whole rig thumps down the road like it is rolling on octagons until the friction warms the rubber back into shape. The grease in the fifth wheel gets so stiff that hooking a trailer can take 3 times longer than normal. The air lines that run the brakes are full of compressed air, and any trace of moisture in that air freezes solid inside the valves. A truck with frozen brake lines either can't release its brakes or, far worse, can't apply them. So drivers drain their air tanks religiously and add alcohol to the system to keep the moisture from turning to ice. Even the diesel itself is a problem. Standard diesel fuel starts to gel and turn cloudy well before it gets this cold, clogging filters and starving the engine, so everything up here runs on special Arctic blends and anti-gel additives, and drivers still watch their fuel filters the way a heart surgeon watches a monitor. I mean, think about that for a second. At these temperatures, keeping the truck running is its own full-time job. The driver keeps that engine alive hour by hour, the same way he keeps himself alive. And then there is the checklist that has nothing to do with the truck. Arctic sleeping bag rated to 60 below, behind the seat. Extra parka, insulated bib overalls, military surplus bunny boots, candles, matches, food, water bottles stored upside down so the ice forms at the bottom instead of freezing the cap shut. A driver on the Dalton packs like a man who expects to be stranded, because sooner or later everybody is. By 6 in the morning, the truck rolls out of Fairbanks and onto the Elliott Highway, headed for the start of the Dalton. The pavement ends and the real road begins. Gravel, packed snow and polished ice, winding north through black spruce forest under a sky that is still completely dark and will stay dark for most of the day. The first hours of the run set the rhythm. The driver rides the throttle gently on the ice, reads the road surface in the headlights, and listens. On the CB radio, Channel 19, voices call out their positions by mile marker. Northbound at Beaver Slide. Southbound coming down the roller coaster, watch the glare ice at the bottom. The Dalton is narrow, the hills are steep, and loaded trucks meeting on a grade in the dark need to know about each other long before they see headlights. Those nicknames on the radio are not cute. Beaver Slide, the roller coaster, Oh Shit Corner. Every one of them was earned by trucks that went off the road there. About 60 miles in, the road crosses the Yukon River on a wooden-decked bridge that tilts downhill at a 6% grade. Crossing a quarter-mile of sloped, frost-covered wood planking with 40 tons pushing you from behind is the kind of thing that sorts out very quickly who belongs on this road and who doesn't. Then comes the sign, a simple marker on the side of the highway, crusted in hoarfrost, telling you that you are now crossing the Arctic Circle. For tourists in the summer, it's a photo stop. For a trucker in January, it's a warning label. At mile 175, the driver reaches Coldfoot, a fuel stop, a repair shop, and a cafe with a buffet, sitting in a frozen valley in the middle of the Brooks Range. Roughly a dozen people live there through the winter. Coldfoot is famous among drivers for one simple reason. It is the farthest north truck stop in North America, and it is the last one. From Coldfoot to Deadhorse is 240 miles, and in that entire distance there is no gas station, no restaurant, no motel, no cell service, and no town. Nothing but the road, the pipeline, and the mountains. Drivers fuel up, eat like it might be their last hot meal for a while, and check the weather report for the one obstacle that worries even the veterans. Because 50 miles north of Coldfoot, the road stops winding through the mountains and starts climbing straight over them. Atigun Pass, 4,739 feet, the highest highway pass in Alaska, and the only road crossing of the entire Brooks Range. The grades run steep, the switchbacks are tight, and the mountainsides above the road are loaded with snow all winter. This is active avalanche country, and the state highway crews fight it all season, triggering controlled slides to knock the snow down before it comes down on its own. Drivers chain up at the bottom, crawl over the top in low gear, and try not to think about the slopes hanging above them. For a while on a clear night, the climb can actually feel calm. Stars, white peaks, the pipeline glinting alongside the road. That feeling never lasts. The wind on Atigun can go from still to 50 miles an hour in minutes, and when it does, it picks the snow up off the mountains and erases the world. Whiteout, the road, the sky, and the mountainside all turn into the same glowing gray in the headlights. Drivers describe crawling across the pass at walking speed, steering by the reflector posts, one delineator at a time, knowing that a few feet past the edge of the gravel there is nothing but a long drop into a frozen valley. More than one driver has parked on the pass, set the brakes, and simply waited for hours, engine running, because moving at all was suicide. And this is the stretch of road where that number in the title stops being a number. On the north side of Atigun, the road drops out of the mountains onto the north slope, a treeless plain of frozen tundra running 150 miles to the Arctic Ocean. There is nothing out there to slow the wind down. Air temperatures on the slope regularly sit at 40, 50, 60 below zero, and Alaska holds the record for the coldest temperature ever measured in the United States, 80 below zero, recorded at Prospect Creek right along this very route back in January of 1971. That's not a typo, by the way. 80 below, actual air temperature, no wind chill involved. Add a 30-mile-an-hour Arctic wind on top of numbers like that, and the effective temperature on exposed skin plunges past 100 below zero. That is the world these drivers work in, a world where the difference between a routine shift and a fight for your life is one turn of a key. If you're finding this look inside the job worthwhile, take a second and hit subscribe. This channel covers the toughest working lives on the planet every single week. Out on the slope, the driver settles in for the loneliest hours of the run. The road runs straight and white under the headlights. The pipeline rides its supports off to the side like a silver thread, and the only movement for miles might be a herd of caribou or a lone Arctic fox crossing in the high beams. Now and then, a set of headlights appears far ahead, and the two trucks pass each other in a hurricane of blowing snow, rocks pinging off the windshield, and then the dark closes back in. This is where the cold shows you what it really is, a pressure. It pushes in through every seam of the truck. Drivers tape cardboard over half the radiator to keep the engine from overcooling at highway speed. The heater runs flat out, and the inside of the windshield still grows feathers of frost in the corners. Metal door handles will tear skin off bare fingers. If a driver steps out and spits, it crackles before it hits the ground. And the body has its own checklist now, just like the truck did. Never step outside without gloves, ever, even for 10 seconds. Keep the parka zipped before opening the door, because the cold doesn't give you time to fix mistakes. At 100 below with wind, frostbite takes exposed skin in roughly 2 minutes. Fingers, nose, ears, cheeks. Old Dalton hands can spot a rookie by the white patches on his face at the end of the season. Breathing the air is its own skill. Suck in a deep lungful of 60 below air through your mouth and it feels like swallowing broken glass. So drivers learn to breathe shallow, through their nose, behind a neck gaiter that slowly turns into a mask of ice. Then there's the work itself. Chaining up on the slope means lying on frozen gravel next to 70-inch tires, threading steel chains with hands that stop obeying you after 90 seconds, then climbing back into the cab to thaw your fingers on the defroster vent until they burn, then going back out to finish. A simple task that takes 10 minutes in Texas takes 45 minutes up here, done in shifts against the cold. Most people never heard about this part of the job. The camera crews film the scenery. The chains are the job. But here's the detail that everyone misses about trucking in the Arctic. The greatest danger on the Dalton isn't the ice or the avalanches or even the cold itself. It's a breakdown. A dead engine on the north slope in January is a countdown clock. The cab loses its heat within the hour. After that, the driver is living on his survival gear, a candle, and whatever warmth his own body can produce inside a 60 below sleeping bag, waiting in a steel box on a road that might not see another vehicle for a long, long time. There are stretches out here with no cell coverage at all, where the CB and a satellite messenger are the only voices a stranded man has, which is why the Dalton Highway runs on one unwritten law, and every driver knows it before they know the road. You never ever drive past a stopped truck. It doesn't matter if you're behind schedule. It doesn't matter if the company is screaming about the load. You slow down, you roll your window down, and you make sure the other driver waves you off. Because out here, the next truck is the rescue service. There is no one else coming. Drivers who hate each other in the Coldfoot parking lot will stand in 100 below wind chill for an hour, handing each other wrenches because both of them know the arithmetic. Today, it's his truck. Next week, it might be yours. Which, when you think about it, makes this lonely road one of the least lonely places in trucking. There's one more weight pressing on the men who run this route, and it has nothing to do with temperature. It's the dark. Up at Dead Horse, the sun sets in late November and does not rise again until the middle of January. Nearly 2 months without a single sunrise. Drivers run their entire rotation in headlights and starlight, loading in the dark, climbing Atigun in the dark, eating in the dark. Some of them will tell you the northern lights make up for it, great green curtains rolling over the Brooks Range while the diesel hums underneath you. Others will tell you quietly that around week 3 the darkness starts leaning on a man, and that the smart ones keep photographs of home taped to the dash and a strict phone call schedule with their wives. The cold attacks the body, the dark goes after something else, so why do it? Why would anyone sign up for square tires, frozen brake lines, avalanche zones, and 2-minute frostbite? Part of the answer is exactly what you'd guess: money. Dalton drivers are among the best paid truckers in America. Experienced hands hauling to Prudhoe Bay can clear well over $100,000 a year, and the top drivers, the ones trusted with oversized rig moves and heavy haul in the worst months, can push a good deal past that. A man can run hard up here for 10 or 15 winters and walk away with a paid-off house and a retirement that most jobs will never offer. For a lot of these drivers, that was the plan on day one. Endure the Arctic, bank the checks, get out. Funny thing, though. Ask the old-timers at the counter in Coldfoot, the ones with 20 and 30 years on the haul road, why they're still here, and money is almost never the first thing out of their mouths. They talk about the road, about being trusted with something genuinely hard, in an age when very few jobs are. About the fact that when they crest Atigun Pass with 80,000 pounds behind them and the whole white spine of the Brooks Range spread out under the stars, they are doing something that maybe a few hundred people on this entire planet can do. Down in the lower 48, a trucker is invisible. Up here, when a driver backs a load of drill pipe into the yard at Dead Horse with his mirrors iced over and his fuel filters half waxed, the men on that dock know exactly what it took to get there. One veteran driver put it about as plainly as it can be put. He said the cold is honest. It doesn't care about your excuses, your paperwork, or your bad day. It only cares whether you did everything right. And there is a certain kind of man, he said, who finds that restful. By the time the truck rolls back into the ice fog of Fairbanks days later, the driver has crossed the Arctic Circle twice, climbed the highest road pass in Alaska twice, and spent hour after hour in air that would kill an unprepared man in less time than it takes to watch this video. He'll fuel up, sleep, and in a day or two, he'll point the hood north and do the whole thing again. In his wallet, one of those old-timers keeps a photograph from his very first run in 1987. A young man grinning next to a frost-covered Kenworth at the Coldfoot Fuel Island. He says he keeps it to remind himself that the road hasn't changed at all since that picture was taken. Only the men do. The Dalton just waits, 414 miles of ice and gravel, for the next driver willing to find out what 113 below actually feels like. If this gave you a real look at one of the hardest jobs in America, the video on your screen right now takes you aboard a crab boat in the Bering Sea, where the ocean spends the entire shift trying to kill the crew. Click it. I'll see you there.